In 1955, when we moved from Princeton, New Jersey to Ithaca, New York, my sister and I both started at new schools where neither of us knew anyone. Not an unusual situation for Americans moving around from place to place, but she handled it considerably better than I did. She was starting in 7th grade in a school called Boynton Junior High, which was in downtown Ithaca. I was enrolled at Cayuga Heights Elementary School, a smaller school, which was in our neighborhood where the moneyed class lived. We built our own home there after living there for a year, and Dad was teaching at Cornell, so we were in the upper crust of Ithaca. He taught at the Cow College, as it was called, the agricultural school of Cornell, which was the least prestigious part of Cornell. My sister Anne quickly acquired a vast set of friends because she was friendly. She was nice to people. She was interested in people, genuinely interested in people. Since she was my sister, I couldn't observe that about her. She was too close for me to observe her genuine qualities, because it was just the three of us in our family unit most of the time during those years. The first 2.5 years we were in Ithaca, Dad did teach at Cornell. Then he was lured off to New York City to become the head of something called the Council on Economic and Cultural Affairs, part of the Rockefeller Foundation. It had its offices in Rockefeller Center, New York City. You could see the skating rink from his corner office. But he was in New York most of every week. He would fly home for the weekends. So most of the time it was just Anne and me and our mother, who had her problems dealing with the world at large. She was, in those years, Mom was going to Cornell herself as a graduate student, getting a degree in child development, which is an irony looking back on our family, since I, at the time, was a miserable little boy, a miserable child, wetting my bed every night, weeping numerous times every day, with this deep, abiding sadness that I tried to cover up with smiles and didn't even recognize as sadness myself. It just was my world and who I was. I was an outsider looking at people, yearning to be inside, not knowing how to get inside. My sister, on the other hand, had the gifts of friendliness, openness. She was cute, she was blonde, she was friendly. People liked her. She won these civic awards when she was in junior high. Every month, it seemed to me, it felt to me, every month, Anne was winning yet another award from the Kiwanis Club, from the Lions, from the Elks, from the, I don't know if the Masons gave out awards. They're supposed to be highly secretive. Are they the ones who wear the fezzes? Or is that the Shriners? I don't know that the Shriners gave Anne an award either. But these Elks and Lions and people, the groups named after big, stunning animals, and Kiwanis Club, whatever that name means, they liked her a lot. They gave her these monthly awards that would have little write-ups in the Ithaca Journal, about 4 or 5 inches long, with her picture at the top. Anne Mosier of Boynton Junior High wins this month's Girl of the Month award from blah-de-blah-blah. And there I was, suffering, looking through the paper and finding this item again, yet again. And her report cards were dull, boring items because they were nothing but A's, solid A's, straight A's, all through junior high, all through high school. I don't know if she ever got a B in anything. I was not a D student, but I got B's. I got an occasional C. I was in in a program called the Accelerated Program of the smart kids from Cayuga Heights and from similar places. We had faculty, parents. I was in this program. Well, Anne had been in it too, but she had gotten straight A's in the Accelerated Program. So she was a triple A if we were getting bond ratings, which we weren't, but we were because college entrance and all that sort of thing. She was, from the start, I think, hoping to get into a top Eastern college. That probably was on her mind. It wasn't on my mind. As a first grader at Cayuga Heights School in 1955 when we first arrived, I was hoping, if I had hopes, which I don't think I had specifically, but if I had yearnings, it was to have some friends and to be comfortable in the world. And I got off, I think, on the wrong foot by bragging right away about having been born in India. Well, these other kids, they might have been destined for the Accelerated Program, but not too many of them knew where India was, or even that it was supposed to be an exotic word in our lexicon. We didn't know these sorts of things yet. We hadn't gotten very far in the snob ladder yet. But Ralph Wiegand, although he wasn't any more or less snobbish than any of the rest of us, Ralph Wiegand did seem to know where India was, and he took issue with my claim right away. He looked at me, he shook his head, 6-year-old Ralph Wiegand shaking his head at 6-year-old me. He says, "You couldn't have been born in India. You don't have dark skin. You're white just like all the rest of us." So that snuffed that bit of snobbery on my part. I was lying. I was a little first-grade liar claiming to have been born in some place. Now, Dave Jones started Cayuga Heights School pretty much the same time I did, I think. He was from Green Bay, Wisconsin. That had some clout, I think. For one thing, people in Green Bay looked like people in Ithaca, New York, presumably. No one had any idea where Green Bay was, any more than they had Allahabad or Mussoorie or these names I could quote in India. But Dave wasn't a liar. We knew he was telling the truth. So maybe I got off slightly on the wrong foot. Maybe no one was paying attention. That's probably more likely. But the fact was, I embarked on my years of elementary school doing fairly well academically and doing fairly well making friends, whereas Anne developed into the golden girl of Ithaca. She didn't have an item in the Ithaca Journal proclaiming her the golden girl of Ithaca, but she might as well have. In 7th grade at Boynton, they wisely did away with this habit before I got there, but in 7th grade, when Anne was enrolled at Boynton, they had an election toward the end of the year where one category was most popular girl in the 7th grade, most popular boy in the 7th grade, or for all I know, maybe it was the most popular 7th grader, bar none. She was elected. Most popular girl. 8th grade, they had the election again. She was elected. Anne Mosier, most popular girl. In 9th grade, they had the election, but Anne couldn't be the most popular girl a 3rd year in a row. They had a rule saying that. Maybe they'd made the new rule to forestall this possibility, but it didn't matter. She was the president of the student council by then, so she had plenty of bragging rights. If she'd been a braggart, which she was not, to further complicate things and stymie me in any competitive urge I might have had with her. But I soon gave up any inkling of ever competing with her for grades or for affection from favorite teachers or anything like that, because she was the golden girl. She had the aura. I was just a normally bright kid from Cayuga Heights. I was not the most popular boy in first grade at Cayuga Heights Elementary School. Blessedly, we did not have such an election. And yet, I wouldn't have minded a little bit of a pat on the shoulder, a little gold star, a little award of some sort. The only possibility, it seemed, for any such award for me was the prospect of sailing through the entire year with perfect attendance, because Cayuga Heights School at that point had a custom of awarding children who had perfect attendance, and this meant you had never been tardy as well as absent for any day of the entire school year. Not tardy, not absent, not interesting probably in any way, but you were always on time for class. You were always there. You got this certificate at the end of the year. Your teacher signed it. The school principal signed it. And it was something to be proud of and show your parents. Well, I was a healthy kid. I cried a lot during the daytime. I wet my bed at night. The other kids didn't know that. There were a number of us who were slow maturing and leaky in one way or another. I probably wasn't the only one who wet my bed at night either, but we didn't talk about that in show and tell time. But I might have won this award, except I found out late in the year that the school district had changed its policy and they were no longer going to award this perfect attendance certificate to students who should have been awarded it. I was devastated. You wouldn't think such a small thing would matter much to anybody, first grader or not. But I had indulged my hopes in this award. I had invested this award with great importance because it would somehow counterbalance all these things that were always being said about Anne. So when I didn't get it, it seemed like a huge betrayal, a huge, devastating disappointment to me. And I cried about that too. Usually I didn't have any idea what I was crying about. It just overwhelmed me suddenly, and I was in tears. We went on this one vacation trip, our family. We must have been gone 10 days. We went out to the Midwest to see our grandmother Hall in Illinois, and then on to Champaign-Urbana to see our Mosier grandparents. And Ted, my brother Ted, who was 10 years older. So I was 7 or 8 at that point, and he was 17 or 18. He had a new Brownie box camera. Still remember very clearly its dimensions. It was a cube like this. It had a little clicker on one side and a viewfinder built onto the top. Cute little thing. It took 12 photos in a roll, something like that. Anyway, Ted said to me on embarkation, he said, "Now, Dick, any place we are that you haven't cried all day long, you go a whole day without crying, I'll let you take a picture on my new camera." So I was doing my best not to cry. The days went by. We traveled west. We heard little country music stations, snatches of it on our radio as we were fiddling with the knobs. We heard gospel music playing. If it was at night and we were driving, we heard ball games from Chicago, from Cleveland. And yet, I didn't get to take any pictures. We reached Illinois in our station wagon, our so-called Plodge that was half Plymouth and half Dodge. Hall Hill, it was called, my grandmother Hall's farmhouse out in the country between Decatur and Springfield, near Buffalo, Illinois, and near Illiopolis, Illinois. We came to Hall Hill. I had gone almost an entire day without weeping. This was my chance. And then something happened. I think it had something to do with the slice of watermelon. We ate a lot of watermelon there, I remember, and something was wrong with my piece of watermelon, and I felt tears coming on. 7 years old, 8 years old I must have been at this point. This was in 1958, so I must have been 9 years old. I was still crying, and I wanted to take a picture even if it meant cheating. I went behind a tree and I cried. I still remember the size of the tree. It was about this big around. I went behind it and I cried and I dried my eyes and I came back. Ted may have spotted me or he might not have, but at any rate, he showed mercy and he let me take a picture on his Brownie box camera. So since I was that miserable a child, for whatever reason, it follows that I wasn't perfect either at making friends. But I could attend school perfectly. And I did that year, whichever year that was. Actually, I think it might have been the second grade year, because in first grade, I had not had a perfect attendance record, but I had witnessed that some other kids who had had perfect attendance were granted these lovely certificates, and I coveted one. So by the end of second grade, when it appeared I was going to have perfect attendance, I was so pleased because I knew I'd get this certificate. And then I learned tragedy, that the school district wasn't granting them anymore. I was inconsolable. Anne must have observed this bit of my misery. Maybe not the whole of my misery, but she was up close. She must have seen what was going on a lot of the time. And while she could be a little bullying and teasing like any older sibling, she had this very sweet side that responded to this part of my misery and perhaps sympathized, knowing how rough our mother could be on everyone in the house, on us during the week, and on Dad when he was home from New York, working like crazy on the house to finish it on weekends, and being somewhat browbeaten by our mother, who had a very sharp, sarcastic tongue. Anne would have sympathized with me. And so the school year was just about to end. And on the last day of school, at breakfast, Anne presented me with a package. It was like a book, the size of a full sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11. It's maybe half an inch thick. I unwrapped it, and it was a picture frame, the sort of frame people put diplomas in. Black frame, complete with glass. And inside it, behind the glass, was a certificate she had made by hand with India ink on a specially fine piece of paper she had purchased. Not just a piece of typing paper, but paper for art projects. And she had meticulously drawn with a nib pen, "This document hereby acknowledges that Richard W. Mosier on this day in," all this kind of whereof talk. It was only about 3 lines, but it stated that I had had perfect attendance, including no tardiness throughout the school year of whichever year that had been. And then underneath was one line. Beside it said class teacher, and another line that said school principal. And I was to take that to school with me and have my teacher and principal sign it. And then I could put it on my wall. They would all be very proud of me, Anne said. And here, how old was she when she did this? She was a junior high kid, the age where kids are supposed to be at their brattiest, at their most sullen and surly. Even in those days, they were pretty sullen and surly in junior high. The age where the girls are often taller than the boys, and the boys' voices are changing, the girls' hormones as well as the boys are changing. Everyone's a little upset by what's going on physically with them. And here she was, taking time to make me a perfect attendance certificate. That was my sweet sister Anne. And I proudly displayed it on my wall of my little room in the downstairs of our house. I proudly displayed it years later in the cabin I built up in northern Michigan. It was on my wall there. I wish I had a better photo of it. I just have a little corner of one snapshot shows the certificate there, very small in the background, and it's got a big blotchy hole where I'd stuck a pin through the photo years later. And somewhere along the line, after my cabin in the woods, which I had in the 70s, I lost the certificate of perfect attendance. I have many other things still, which are of very little emotional value to me. Even my college diploma is stuck in a box somewhere. I haven't thrown it out. I've got it, but I don't have it on the wall. But that document, more valuable to me than a PhD diploma, is a link with the beautiful love from my sister Anne. And I wish I still had it, but I'll always have it in memory.